big problems are the rate of economic growth and the way in which it's creating more and more environmental degradation, and also more and more increasing poverty and, distinction between the rich and poor. And I guess that's been a case for many years now, but we're really reaching some kind of limits where the quality of life is being majorly affected by environmental changes. So I'd say that notion of the great acceleration of economic growth and environmental degradation that's occurred since the 1950s is really the biggest challenge we're facing, trying to figure out how to intervene to both repair the environment and also change the way in which economic dynamics are working. I think we have to be intervening in a whole range of different fronts. We probably have to give up on the idea that there's any one big solution. We have to be experimenting and putting our some kind of ethical commitment to care for each other and for the environment at the centre of all of the activities that we pursue. And I guess the big challenge at the moment is trying to relate to the people who feel disengaged from any sense that they can do anything to change, because it's those groups of people that seem to be reacting and voting into public office, people who aren't caring at all. So, it's very hard to see how we can get together to do these kinds of things at any kind of broader level. So working at any front at a local level or across internationally at a people-to-people level, it seems to be important, while also thinking about how we're going to change things in terms of public politics, which is not serving people well at the moment. It's really making things worse, I think. If we'd taken action 20 years ago on some of these big questions, we would be in a very different place now. I think one thing is to work on different kinds of visions of how we can live together, which might mean different ecological and economic visions that put these things together, that can inspire people, but also I think revealing some of the issues around the ways that economies have produced harm, and how we how we both reveal that but also work with people to understand that and realise that the privilege that they're living under is something that's got a downside for the rest of the world, or for other people in another part of the world. That's a big challenge, I think, for researchers. I mean, even our own lives are based on a certain privilege that we've not really faced up to, and how do we do that and go forward is a big challenge. In our research group, we've always tried to work with people and with where they're at, but bringing to bear a kind of openness to possibility, and then a resistance to a certain kind of reductionist and essentialist thinking that does enrol people in abiding or thinking that one big solution is the answer, or that. So how do you work with that uncertainty of there being multiple ways of going ahead, and yet have a sense of confidence that there is something we can do? I think these are major challenges for social scientists and ecological scientists and others. So it's really being, I guess, reflexive on how our kind of modernist form of thinking has got us to this position, and facing the ways in which it needs to be rethought. If economies placed a lot more emphasis on environmental care and repair, there could be growth of those activities, which would be employing a lot of people. So I'm not sure that just being anti-growth is the way forward. I think we need different kinds of growth. And if it was a growth of care of environment, if we could enrol all the coal miners of Australia in restoring the landscapes that have been destroyed by coal mining, that would create jobs. But, how we would distribute the wealth and how we would maintain people's livelihoods doing that kind of work is another thing, and how to do that, I think, require us to think through other distributive mechanisms. Well, I guess I see myself at the moment as working on a number of fronts. One is to educate and mentor another generation of scholars who are interested in trying to rethink economies and place them in a more kind of ethically responsible relationship to ecologies. And then there's other work I'm doing on how communities might start to generate their own ways of thinking about gender equality and how they might monitor what is happening in terms of relations around gender, rather than having kind of indicators plonked on them from the United Nations. So that all the work I'm doing is a lot of, I guess, action research with different kinds of communities or constituencies to try and pick out and elaborate and understand where things are working and why they're working well, working in the sense of trying to enact more ethical economies. I think part of the job as a scholar is to show that there is possibility, show that there are things that are doing something, rather than focus on all the ways in which everything is not working. So it's partly looking for those things in all sorts of places, and then working to amplify what people are doing and theorise it in a way that can make it seem legitimate as a way forward, rather than small or inconsequential, that sort of thing. So that's a form of thinking, I suppose, that I'm working with and working with others to try and develop, and that can extend outside of universities into communities in lots of ways. People pick up on that kind of thing. Apart from that, I try and recycle.